Good afternoon, my dear listener. I am Sister Olga Masango from the Daughters of St. Paul. We are listening The Power of Reading, a book review program in Radio Maria, Nairobi, 107.3 FM. And as we promised in the last program, we will continue to present the book, The Church in the Neighborhood, Synodality in Small Christian Communities. This book was authored by Bishop Rodrigo Mejia Saldarriaga, that is a Jesuit bishop and who is Bishop Emeritus of Sodo Osana in Ethiopia. By the way, this month of October kicked off with the Synod on Synodality, the second section, an important event in the life of our church today. The synthesis report number 16, dedicated towards a listening and accompanying church, for consideration, it says, widespread in many parts of the world, small Christian communities foster listening practice of and amongst the baptized. We are called to enhance their potential, in particular by exploring how they can be adapted to urban context. And in number 18, it says also, in the light of what we have shared, it is important to ask how we can promote participation in the various councils when many feel they are not up to the task. Synodality grows when each member is involved in the processes and decision-making for the mission of the church. In this sense, we are encouraged by many small Christian communities in the emerging church who live the closeness of the day-to-day around the Word of God and the Eucharist. Today, as I have said at the beginning, is here with us His Lordship Rodrigo Mejia from the Society of Jesus, known popularly as Jesuits, and Bishop Emeritus of Sodo Osana, Vicariate in Ethiopia. Welcome, Bishop Rodrigo. Good morning, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
The book, The Church in the Neighborhood, is not a new book for the Eastern Africa readers. It was published by St. Paul Publications Africa for the first time in 1992. By the way, St. Paul Publications Africa is today's Pauline's Publications Africa. Why the same Pauline's Publications Africa wanted to publish it again 22 years later?
Well,
is it not a bit out of date?
Maybe you are the most authorized to respond to this question, because if a publisher prints a book and the book is out of date, the marketing will be impossible. Nobody will buy it. So I would reverse the thing. The proof that the book is not out of date is that the publication house, publishers like you, received perhaps many requests, many demands, the book to be reprinted, republished. And also myself as an author, I convey to you the request addressed personally to me to republish the book, because the first edition was not a very big edition at that time, and also many people have missed the book, others did not have the chance to purchase it in the past. But also, we have to take into consideration that in publishing things, there are publications that get out of date very quickly. Nobody will ask for the newspaper of 1 week ago because it's out of date, because that is the nature of periodical publication for news. But there are other books that continue to be printed even after 1,000 years, like the Bible, and is never out of date. It depends very much on the content and the dimension of the book. And this book treats about the church. And the title itself, The Church in the Neighborhood, is not out of date. The church is always up to date because it's living, is an institution made by humans that are still alive, that are still struggling with the problems of daily life, and they are also living in a neighborhood. So the reality is alive, and the book tries to cope it with this reality. However, there is a special reason why this publication again is not just to reprint, it's a revised edition. How? Because we tried to integrate into it the time of the church we are living now. The church in the neighborhood in 1992 is not the same church in the neighborhood today. Why? We are living in a period of great transformation of the church, that is synodality. And at that time, the word was practically unknown by the Christians and in the vocabulary of the church common. Now, the book is trying to see how to present the church in the neighborhood today in a church which is looking for synodality. And that makes an extra reason for making it a book that is up to date.
So, what is new in this new revised edition of your book?
Well, it is precisely to show how a Messiah priority in the 90s, for the 80s, of the small Christian communities is being verified today in 2024 in a time of synodality. And I think it is the factor that the small Christian communities, as the undertitle of the book says, are really present, active, and practicing synodality. And that is very important to show that synodality is not just an idea, is not just a theory, is not just a kind of poetic name, but is a reality that tries to be lived in the small Christian communities. And in the book, I inserted a small chapter showing in which way the small Christian communities are implementing, trying to live synodality. In a nutshell, can be said like this. Synodality is built upon three main pillars, three main columns: communion, participation, and mission. And these three characteristics, these three pillars, are precisely the pillars of the small Christian communities. It's a community that is communion of the neighbors, that do not attend only Sunday, each one on his own, perhaps in different churches, just for the sake of curiosity, changing parishes, but it's the communion of those who, living close and sharing the same faith, are to be in communion with one another. One of the great challenges for our big cities today in the whole world is the anonymity of living in buildings that are built with 100 apartments, and nobody knows who is living in the other floor, nobody knows who is living in the other apartment. But this is not the case always. There are still in our African cities a real neighborhood, a real community, local, with special local boundaries. Now, not only communion, but communion among them, but communion with the parish. This group is not just a ghetto, a kind of a special reserve closed in itself. Is a member of the parish and is at the service of the parish as well with other groups. So that makes the communion goes beyond the group itself to other groups. And not only that, to the whole church, the small Christian community is not just part of the church, an incomplete part of the church, no. The small Christian community has exactly the same characteristics of the universal church. Is one Catholic and Apostolic, and is in communion with the Rome, with the Pope, and the hierarchy in the country. This is communion. The second is participation, and that is very visible in the small Christian communities, because it's not just in their meetings, a meeting of a classroom where someone is speaking, teaching, and the others are just passively listening and taking notes. No. It's in the small Christian communities, we praise very much the sharing, the participation of all. Anybody can give his own point of view. Anybody can raise a question. Anybody can share his or her own problems, asking for prayers. If someone has a sick in the family, it's matter to share and to participate the life of the family in the community, in the small Christian community. They participate also in the life of the parish by their work. It's known that in many parishes in Nairobi, the small Christian communities take the responsibility of preparing the Sunday Mass. It's a rota among them to prepare, to clean the church, to prepare, to accommodate the Christians, to take the question of the readings, etc. It's a kind of very clear service of participation in the church. And finally, mission. The small Christian communities are started as the church itself for mission. Jesus did not say, meet yourselves, celebrate anniversaries, celebrate jubilees. No. His last words in the Gospel of Matthew and Mark is, go, announce the gospel, spread the good news. You will be my witnesses in the whole world, from here until the end of the world. And that is the same mandate to the small Christian communities according to their own possibilities. That is different from other movements. There are movements in the church that may gather once a week or once a month to pray together, prayer groups. This is okay. It's not bad. It's one kind of participation in the life of the church. But the small Christian communities are more than prayer groups. They pray, of course, but they plan also the action, their ministry. They share their problems. They look for solutions. They contribute locally, according to their territory and their possibilities, to alleviate the problems, the accidents, and the situations of people around, irrespective even of their religion, because suffering has no religion. So these three characteristics make that the small Christian communities are really practicing synodality. They are based in the great principle of synodality, that is, the common dignity of all Christians. We are baptized by the same baptism, one baptism, one faith, one Christ, as St. Paul reminds the Ephesians. The dignity of the Pope, of course, is due to the leadership of the church, but not as a Christian, is as Christian, is not baptized with a special baptism to become Pope. He is sharing the same common dignity of being a child of God, a child of the family of God.
Well, indeed, you said common dignity of the baptized. And you mentioned synodality. And as we understand that synodality is a theological notion that concerns the universal church and its structures of pastoral government. But what is the link between this theological theme of synodality and the small Christian communities in our parishes?
Yeah, you can approach synodality in a faculty of theology as part of theology, part of ecclesiology. And at that moment you have to show the biblical roots of this, the practice of the primitive church, the tradition of the church, the magisterium, etc., to justify that this is really a quality of the church. Synod is to go together, to work together, to be together, and to have a common mission. But at the level of the reality, when we come down to the smallest part of the church, that is the family of the people, father, mother, and children, even there should be synodality. That is a quality of life together. Practicing communion. If there is no communion, the marriage will be broken. Participation. If the children do not participate, they are not educated. They are not given chance to grow. And mission is the purpose of the family. That is to educate the children as good citizens, to transmit the faith to them. The first educators of faith are not the priests, are the parents. And the main elements of religion and faith should be communicated at home. What is true at home is still true at the group of families that constitute a small Christian community. Because the small Christian community is not just a movement of individuals. Sometimes they say, yeah, the men do not come, but the women come. But if we see that clearly, the real membership is the family. Sometimes the father and the mother may attend the meeting. Sometimes both of them cannot attend the meeting. But the membership is not bound or determined by attending to meetings, but by the communion, participation, and mission. Perhaps when the wife briefs the husband about the meeting they did not attend at home, that is also a mission of the small Christian community. So we are dealing here not with the theological topic, but with the theological praxis, the theological practice of the consequence of being synodal at the most simple level, the level of neighborhood. Of course, the parish also participates in that, but we see that the parish has to face other challenges. The parish may comprise maybe 5,000, 10,000, even in Nairobi, I know parishes of more than 15,000 Christians. How can they know each other? Sunday Mass is not enough. There are even 5, 6 Sunday Masses in the same day because of the amount of people. So the communion participation and mission is more limited at that huge level. It's good to show the communion of all communities, because this is the new image of the parish. But the real communication is done at the level, at more reduced level, at the level of neighbors. In the Acts of the Apostles, this is the image of the church. We cannot imagine Corinth or Ephesus or other, the Thessalonica, the communities of Paul, made of 150 or 200 people. At the very beginning, they were a small group. But even if they were a small group, Paul writes to the church that is in Corinth, to the church that is in Thessalonica. He called them the church because they are living all the characteristics of the Catholic Church. But they are living it at a local level. And that is how, like the heart is pumping the blood, the blood is in the heart, but it is also in the little finger. It's the same blood. And that is why the same synodality that is discussed at the level of the faculties of theology is the reality that is reaching to the members, the last members, the local members of the church in the parish and in the small Christian community.
107.3 FM. We are in an interview with Bishop Rodrigo Mejia. Bishop, in the Eastern African countries, practically all the parishes of the Catholic Church have had small Christian communities for so many years now. We can say that they are doing well. What could be the message of this book for them after so many years of good experience? In fact, we are celebrating 50 years, a golden jubilee of the small Christian communities.
Okay, precisely this occasion of a jubilee is not just to celebrate the past, but is to evaluate the past and to renew the future. To give thanks to God because of the past or all the good things that have been done, but to examine the present situation and also to discern, to plan for the future. It happens in the history of religious groups, especially, or associations, that at the very beginning there is a great enthusiasm, a great energy, is something new, and that all people are very committed and very generous, very devoted to the group and to the identity and to the mission of the group. But it may happen that the routine may enter, making the routine is a kind of virus, damaging the enthusiasm, the energy of groups. And we have seen even in the history of religious families in the church how they have been declines, crises, moments of declines. Even the great families, for historical reasons, for economic reasons, social, whatever, not with bad will necessarily, but for historical circumstances, families have felt the need of reformation. We know, for example, that families started by St. Benedict in Europe, they multiplied and they started several religious families. At the moment, there was a need to St. Bernard to start a reformer Cistercian family. And in the same way, we have, honestly, in this celebration of 50 years, examine ourselves to see what is being done well, to give thanks, but what can be done better. Not necessarily that we are doing bad things in the small Christian communities, but there are new challenges. And there are new challenges because we sometimes, this group, which is necessarily a religious group, may be contaminated by the spirit of the world, the spirit of economy, or the spirit of business, or the spirit of politics, of the spirit of tribe or ethnic group. And that has to be revised because we are not a group aligned by any other identity other than baptism, other than our faith in Jesus Christ and confessing the Catholic Church. So, because of that, this book offers the opportunity to revise, like a mirror, of what was thought at the very beginning, more than 22 years ago, as it was requested at the very beginning. How have we kept our identity as a small Christian communities? Where are our ministries, our services that are described in the book very clearly? Wahudumu Waafia, the ministries of health in the neighborhood, for example. Are there still in the small Christian communities people in charge of supervising the hygienic structures of the neighborhood? Or the ministers or the servants of marriage, for example, that are supposed to encourage and to guide and to motivate those who have not yet celebrated the religious Christian marriage, but are a family established, they live together, maybe there are other problems, the dowry or financial problems. Are those ministers of marriage still active in the small Christian communities? One easy solution is, for example, not to know how to do in the meeting. And then they start doing something good, that is prayer. But after the prayer, they read the Bible and they go home. But there is no sharing of social problems around. They think that this is not the task of the small Christian communities. And here I take advantage to mention a special challenge that is to be revised on the occasion of this anniversary. I know I have seen the progress of the parishes, especially here in Nairobi, especially a visible progress in the building of churches. The churches that were 22 years back were too small, and the parish priests with energy, goodwill and commitment have been planning new churches, big ones, beautiful ones. But they needed money for that. And for that, they used the small Christian communities, even creating a spirit of competition, like a kind of Itega or Harambe, to make the contribution linked to the membership of the small Christian community. That creates a serious problem, because most of the members of the small Christian communities are not rich people, and they are ashamed not to contribute because they cannot contribute. Therefore they drop their presence in the meetings. That is a challenge. The small Christian communities are not established as fundraising groups. They can contribute to the church, of course, but in the normal classical way on the Sunday masses, when the contribution is anonymous, nobody knows how much did you give, how many times you have contributed. They leave it to your free possibilities and generosity. I think I have had the occasions to voice this challenge in seminars with some parishes where they have invited me. Let us separate financial problems with fundraising groups, that we have the right to contact other benefactors, whatever, but Christians are generous, but they are also poor. And this poverty may prevent them to be a member that feels at ease when they cannot contribute, especially when the contribution is fixed. Everybody has to bring next time 1,000, 2,000 shillings. Every small Christian community has to give to the parish 5,000 shillings for this or for that. That, I think, is not in the spirit. The purpose is good, but the way has to be revised. This is just an example. Many other things can be revised. Let us have the courage not to sleep under our golden medals of the past, but to say, what can we correct? What can we do better in the future?
Well, those are the challenges that you bring to us, and in fact, the Association of Members of Episcopal Conferences of East Africa, called in brief AMESEA, is about to close a jubilee year. As we mentioned, we are celebrating 50 years after the bishop of this resort association declared the small Christian community as a pastoral priority in the parish. Now, in 50 years, the African societies have known a lot of progress, a lot of development, and also new challenges. Do you think that small Christian communities have also made progress? Can you mention also some of the new challenges that are emerging?
Well, yes, I mentioned concretely this challenge of economy. But there are other challenges. The challenge of the membership, whereby I hear that is a common complaint that the majority of the members of the small Christian community are women, that men attend very, very few of them, and not always. And that deserves a discernment. Why is it? Probably most of the time, if the meeting is not attractive, if the community became just a devotional group of prayer, men are not so inclined like women to devotions, and that they are not attracted by the meeting because of that. Also because of the lack of action, activities, projects in the community in which the men should be involved. If they are not involved in concrete action and meetings, if they don't have a ministry, they don't like to spend their time just listening as pure spectators in the meeting. And that is why that has to be revised. It's not the fault of men. Most of the time may be the fault of the structure of the community that is not so attractive to the men. However, a kind of problem has been that because of the flourishing of the women movements, like for example, the well-known Catholic Women Association of Kenya, that is a very fantastic, dynamic group of meeting, they were a challenge to men to form their own corresponding group, the Catholic Men Association, CMA. That is progress. 22 years back, I never saw the Catholic Men Association, and it is there, and it is born out of a reaction, a progress to this. I think the small Christian communities have to ask themselves, are they attracting enough, for example, the youth? Are they activities where the youth are needed, where the youth can be engaged, either in music, in theater, in cultural manifestations, in dance, in celebrations? Do these communities call on the youth? Not that they have to attend the meeting every time. I insist, the membership is not on the attendance of a meeting. In the past, when I was a child and a young man, it was like that. If you miss 3 meetings without excuse, you are sent away. You are no longer a member. No. Here it is daily life what is required. I may not attend the meeting, but during my week I am doing the task that the community committed me to do, that I am engaged in that project. I work. Those who visit the Wahudumu wa Maskini, the minister of helping the sick, the poor in the parish, they don't do that during the meeting. They do that in other days. So that is what we have to revise. How deep the mission project of the community is engaging men and young people in this small Christian community.
Well, Your Lordship, we hear that you wrote this book not in English, but in Kiswahili, the first version. For the local small Christian communities of St. Joseph de Oaka Parish in Kangemi, that is in Nairobi, where you were living for 13 years. Is this Kiswahili edition still available? Are there translations into other African languages?
Oh, yes, that is true. I did not have any pretension to write a book for the whole Kenya and for all Eastern Africa, but only for Kangemi, for the parish. Every single chapter of this book corresponds to a seminar, a small seminar that I gave to the leaders of the communities of St. Joseph the Worker Parish in our only church that we had at that time, that was Mabati Church, completely walls and roof of Mabati for 120 people only. That was the only thing. But then that book, I published them as articles in a magazine that was a popular magazine of the Catholic Secretariat, Kenya Catholic Secretariat at that time, called Mwananchi. Mwananchi was a very popular magazine for the Christians, simple, cheap, not pretending very, very high theology, but interesting articles of formation for lay people, which, by the way, I wish something similar may be restarted on the occasion. Perhaps a magazine of the small Christian communities where the contribution to the magazine come from the communities. They are centered in the Catholic Secretariat, and they produce chronicle achievements of the communities, projects, problems, necrologies, diseases, all the kind of things. But interesting enough, without me knowing, a small Christian community of Dagoretti Corner, Congo Wanye at that time, because it's part of Dagoretti Corner, a man, Mr. Gidinji, translated it into English. He's a man who had very good English, and he presented the text, and some poor publications said, yes, okay. The title is Kanisa la Kimasingira. That is the title. A deanery, a few years back, around 7 years back, the West Deanery of Nairobi had the idea to request Pauline Publications Africa to reprint for them, for the deanery, 500 copies of that book to put in the hands of the members that cannot read English very well. And the publications in very, very short time were ready because they keep the plates in their archives. They published a reprint of that Kanisa la Kimasingira. But it is up to the communities to request that. It is possible to reprint that. I know in other languages, in Malawi, the Montfortian congregation, the Montfort Fathers, translated it into Chichewa. Yes, Mpingo dera letu in Chichewa. And I know that they had in Malawi at that time 3,000 small Christian communities, and they used this book for the formation of the members. So maybe, I don't know translation in any other language, but the Swahili translation was very much sold in Tanzania especially, but even in Kenya it would be useful if it is requested.
Well, is there any message that you want to communicate to the small Christian communities at this moment? Particularly, how can the small Christian communities help to contribute to promote the image of the church as family of God in Africa?
Yeah. This expression, the family of God, was the model or the image of church selected after discernment during the first African Synod to which I had the opportunity to participate as theologian consultant, as the model of the church more fitting in Africa. They are models or symbols of the church that exist. It's not another church, but it's a way to understand the church. And because of the spirit of the Ujamaa in East Africa, the spirit of Ubuntu in the African cultures, in many African cultures of being together, they decided that the spirit of family should be the image of the church in Africa. The expression itself cannot be taken in a restrictive way, because the notion of family can be understood in two different ways. When you speak of my family in Europe, you speak about your mother, father, and brothers and sisters, not the cousins, not the nephews. That is the extended family for them. But here in Africa, sometimes they presented it, this is my brother. You call brother your cousin, the son of your uncle. Is your brother? Yeah. The notion of family in Africa is different. It's extended to a spirit of family. It's not a matter of biological family. That is the first thing. The second thing is that if it is a religious family, if it is the family of the children of God, we cannot pretend that the Catholic Church is the only family of God, and the other people outside the church are not children of God. The Pope was very clear in his latest travel when he spoke about the universality of all human beings being children of God and entering into the plan of salvation of God. When we say the family of God, the model is not the human family. That was another objection. Because they say, how can you compare the church to a family when we have so many broken families? Families that are dysfunctional. Families that are not working well. There is no communion, no faithfulness. There are pango wakando very often, etc. All these things. How can take this model of the church? And the response is clear. The church is the family, not because of in the example or in the model of the human family that be very defective, but in the model of the Trinitarian family, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. God is one God, but not is God alone. It's a God family. It's a God Trinity. And it's a God communion and a God of love. And that is why, in this sense, we can talk about the church as family of God, as an invitation to a higher communion, higher love, faithfulness, in the model of the Trinity. The church is in the model of the Trinity, is the first chapter of Lumen Gentium in Vatican II, and it is also the ideal of marriage, the communion and love among the Father, the Son, and the Church and the children. That is the spirit. The small Christian communities, being church, are inheriting this model in practice. If we are together, it's not because of friendship, it's not because we are colleagues of the same profession, it's not because we belong to the same tribe, it's not because we have the same social level, the social class, or we are all members of the golf club. No. The small Christian communities are not a club for members only. No. The small Christian community is the church that is a group open. A church, as the Pope Francis insists, in Italian, he said, in uscita, going out to the world, serving all. I remember once in Kangemi there was the house of a Muslim, the only one living there that was burned. And then they asked me, the members of the community of the area, are we going to help them? It is a controversy in the community. How can we help him? He is not a member of the community. He is not even a Christian. And I told them, you exist for others. You are family of human beings. All have the same dignity. You are not discriminating anybody. You are accepting that God wants only one flock and one shepherd. Jesus said, I have other sheep that do not belong to this flock of Israel. But the God of Israel cannot be only the God for Israel only. It's the God for all. And that is in that spirit that we have to understand the church as family of God and the small Christian communities participating of this same model.
Thank you, Bishop Rodrigo. We are at the tail end of this, our conversation with you. We know very well that the church in the neighborhood was not only done into a book, in Kiswahili, English, and Chichewa, but also you had a production, a video production on this theme. We are very proud of you that really you have brought to the church a very well documented reality of our ecclesiology. Now we would like really to have your parting shot at this end.
Well, the recommendation and final in a nutshell to all at this celebration is, let us put effort in formation of the members of the community. It's not automatically because you are a member that you have the formation, that you understand we have shared today. We need to form the leaders. Even when someone is appointed, for example, as a reader, he has to be formed to read well, to proclaim the word well. When we have formation for those who work with the poor, we need formation of the leaders especially. They need special seminars, workshops. And not only the lay people need this formation. The seminarians should include the formation about small Christian communities during the curriculum of the formation in theology especially, so that when they are ordained, the small Christian communities are not something rare or unknown, strange to them. And I will go even further. It's a continuous formation. As I was mentioning, the challenge of economy and making the small Christian communities fundraising groups, no, that is a deformation of the community. And the parish priests also need continuous formation. The young parish priests need formation, how to do pastorally dealing with the small Christian communities. My recommendation is one word: permanent formation.
Dear listener, we have been with Bishop Rodrigo Mejia, the author of The Church in the Neighborhood, Synodality in Small Christian Communities. Thank you, Bishop, once again. Now, you may find this book available at Catholic Bookshop in Holy Family Basilica, in Pauline's Communication Center in Ring Road, Westlands, near Prime Bank. You may find also this book in Pauline's Books and Media Center, Gabriela House, Bogan Road, Langata, near Jequat. You may find also this book in Pauline's Books and Media Center in the compound of the Cathedral of Kisumu Archdiocese in Kisumu town. And also may find this book in all diocesan bookshops that are around the country. You may also order online this book using Pauline's www.paulinesafrica.org or shop.paulinesafrica.org. Thank you very much for being with us I am Sister Olga Masango from the Daughters of St. Paul, and you have been listening to The Power of Reading, a book review program in Radio Maria Nairobi 107.3 FM. Good afternoon to everybody. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you.